أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره مغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي أنا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع الذين مهذرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميت أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أن نطعم من لو يشاء الله أنعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توسعة ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مركدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إنا أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قول من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تأكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمر نقص في الخلق أفلا يأكلون وما علمناه الشعر ما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللنا لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشأها أول مرة وبكل خلق أليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العظيم. Surah Fatiha is requested for Marhum Mustafa Jafar and all other Marhumin.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. تیرا چہرہ تیری آنکھیں بھول کب پائی حسین. آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بھائی حسین. چلتے ناکے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر چلتے ناکے سے گرایا خود کو جلتی ریت پر گھٹنیوں کے بل میں تیری لاش تک آئی حسین. بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر، بس میں گھبرائی تھی خنجر تجھ پہ چلتا دیکھ کر، پھر کسی مشکل میں گر کر میں نہ گھبرائی حسین۔ کون تھا جو مرنے والوں میں نہیں تھا خون بھروں، بھولنے بیٹھی تو کس کس کی نہ یاد آئی حسین۔ بہہ رہے تھے آنکھ سے، بہہ رہے تھے آنکھ سے آنسو، تیری رخصت کے وقت، پھر کوئی آنسو نہ ٹپکا، آنکھ پھترائی حسین۔ ہاتھ میں کوزے لیے سب آسمان تکتے رہے، ابر نے ایک بوند پانی کی نہ برسائی حسین۔ تیرا چہرہ تیری آنکھیں بھول کب پائی حسین۔ آج بھی زینب کی آتی ہے صدا بائی حسین۔ محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Respected scholar, my elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen and Kul Marhamin Al-Fatiha. Ayama Yujibun is requested for all the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو اس عالم غربت میں تمہیں جان دو کیسے اس دشت مصیبت میں تمہیں جان دو کیسے اس وقت قیامت میں تمہیں جان دو کیسے اے لال جو تم زندگاں مانگ رہے ہو تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو کیا گزرگی اس باپ کے دل پر نہیں سوچا، تم نے یہ میری جان علی اکبر نہیں سوچا، مر جاؤں گا میں تجھ سے بچھڑ کر نہیں سوچا، تم مجھ سے ضعیفی کا عصا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، دل روتا ہے نظروں سے اگر دور ہو بیٹا، کس طرح جدائی تیری منظور ہو بیٹا، تم ہی میری آنکھیں ہو میرا نور ہو بیٹا، مجھ سے میری آنکھوں کے ضیاء مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، ایک روز تجھے آئے کا مانگا تھا پھوپھی نے، 18 برس نازوں سے پالا تھا پھوپھی نے، بیٹوں سے بھی زیادہ تمہیں چاہا تھا پھوپھی نے، احسان جو زینب نے کیا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، رکھتے نہیں تم اس کی خبر اے میرے پیارے، کس درجہ محبت ہے تیری دل میں ہمارے، نانا کی میرے شکل ہے پیکر میں تمہارے، تم صورت محبوب خدا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، اکبر تمہیں معلوم ہے کیا مانگ رہے ہو، تم باپ سے مرنے کی رضا مانگ رہے ہو، پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وبه نستعين، لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم، والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، شفيع المذنبين، رحمة للعالمين، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا وطبيب ذنوبنا، أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين المكرمين الخيرين الفاضلين السيدين الصادقين، سيما بقية الله في الأرضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين للتراب مقدمه الفدا، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When we look out at the world right now, with everything that's going on, obviously the immediate concern is COVID. There's economic issues that we face in this country. There's political issues that we face here. There's issues regarding our overall health and our nutrition. When we look out at the rest of the world, we see war, we see famine, we see death and destruction, pain, torture. So a lot of people, when they look at this, they understand that this seems to indicate the closeness or the coming of the final Imam. Many of us have this idea in our mind that when things get terrible, when they get really, really bad, these various things that we see out in the world, they're all signs that are pointing to his reappearance. That his zuhur, his return, is just around the corner. Now we pray, we make dua, we recite different ziyarat. Our hearts, especially based on seeing how things are right now, they always long for the Imam to come back. Everybody in the historical periods, when they lived throughout the time of the Ma'asumin, they had this sort of connection, some sort of connection with the Imams of their time, right? Let's say you were a person living in Basra and the Imam was over in Medina. And you heard that, the Imam was coming. He was going to come and visit. Obviously, you would be excited, you'd be elated, and you couldn't wait for something like that to happen. Many of us were in that sort of position, right? It's just like over then, at that time, people would be waiting for the Imam to maybe come see them in their own city, or maybe to see the Imam at the masjid, whatever. The Imam was present. Of course, it's different than our time, right? They could actually just go and see him. Our time is different with this ghaiba and the disappearance of the Imam. What happens though is in our du'as, the way that our heart connects and calls out to the Imam, there seems to be a gap. There seems to be something that we're missing in our understanding. And it's one of the problems that we overlook. When we talk about the tragedy of Karbala, and we always discuss, and people recognize that Karbala itself is a school. It's a form of education. And there's a lot of lessons, both hidden and apparent. One of the lessons there is the lesson of betrayal. Why is it that you had people who clearly had love for the Imams, who clearly understood the value of the Ahlul-bayt, alayhim salam, who were waiting for the Imam to come to them, but they still betrayed. At the end of the day, they abandoned their Imam. They didn't come out and protect their Imam. They didn't answer the Imam's call. And in the extreme sense, some of them even came out and fought against the Imam and his family. What are we missing here? What exactly leads somebody to go and betray their Imam? This is especially important in tonight's discussion. What we want to figure out is if we're so sincere in our words and du'as, or at least we think we are, then why is it so difficult sometimes for us to be sincere in our actions? So this is what we want to discuss tonight on the shahada of our beloved companion and the beloved companion of the Imam and his family member and his true Shia, Hadrat Muslim ibn Aqeel alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. So in order for us to really understand how we got to where we are, or how somebody can betray somebody they love, we need to go back and understand the educational system of Islam, specifically through the personalities and how it was lived. We talked about this the other night. We mentioned that if we want to analyze the lives of the 12 Imams, we will see a certain pattern developing. You take the 12 Imams, divide them into 3 groups of 4, and you see each one of those 4 had a progressive sort of trend, a specific target goal that they had in mind for the people of their time, all which set the ground and the foundation for the next 4 Imams that came after them. So we mentioned it the other night, but I quickly just want to mention it again so it's fresh in our minds. So over here, I'll use a different analogy as well. When we go into a system of education, when we go into a class, there's basically 3 parts. You go in, you're waiting. The first thing is basically your introduction, right? The teacher comes in, you recognize the teacher introduces themselves, right? So you know the teacher. They'll tell you about the subject that they're going to teach. They'll give you the preliminaries, maybe the purpose of what they're going to teach and why they're teaching it, to give you a general idea of what's going to happen. Maybe they give you a syllabus, some suggested readings. Basically, they gave you the introduction to the course and everything involved in the course. That's the first. Then after that, then finally, once you understand the introduction, you can move on to actually learning the information. After you begin learning the subject, finally, if you've learned it properly, that's now when you come to the final stage and your teacher can actually test you. Maybe there's a review period as well, but that's finally when you can be tested on the material that you've learned. So, breaking down the Imams, we can see the same pattern developing, perhaps. The first 4 Imams are introducing the system of wilaya. They're introducing tawheed. They're introducing nubuwah and imam, all of these ideas. They're introducing Islam to people who have abandoned Islam, unfortunately, right after the Prophet's death. So they're introducing themselves as the teachers, as the ones who will instruct the Muslims on how they should learn Islam. Recognize us, the Ahlul-bayt, the Imams, recognize us as the teachers of Islam, not these other individuals. After that, you come to the next 4 Imams. The next 4 Imams, they begin actually teaching the real material now. After, from the previous 4 Imams, the introduction's there, you will know the purpose, you know the general ideas and the concepts, the foundation is sound. Then the next 4 come in, right? The 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and they strengthen the Muslim Ummah by giving them the actual information, right? And this is where we see that they, using the divine guidance that they have, the Ahlul-bayt, they begin explaining the principles of the Quran, the hidden secrets. They talk about the hidden secrets of themselves, the Ahlul-bayt, of wilaya. They talk about fiqh, legal rulings. They talk about the principles of fiqh, usul al-fiqh, the principles of hadith and rijal studies, all these different ideas. And this is the main information that they want to get across to the Muslims. Why? Because then comes the final stage. The last 4 Imams now set up the stage for the review and test period. Basically telling the students, when we're not here, when us, the teachers, are not available directly, how are you going to act? Can you solve these problems on your own or not? So when the Imam steps out of the scene, when you have the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, pretty much out of the scene of the Muslims, were the Shias able to act on their own or not? Could they rely on the principles that they've learned from the previous Imams or not? Did they hold fast to the system of wilaya or did they abandon it? So this whole system we also see in a micro sense in Karbala as well. And we want to explain that inshallah, right now. If you can send a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Many of us say, we recognize that Karbala is a school. We learn from Karbala, right? So the analogy, we can use it there as well. So some of us look directly in Karbala, the words of the Imams, of the companions, of Bibi Zainab alayha salam, and all the rest of the individuals who were present there. We look at the way they conducted themselves, and we take lessons from that. That's fine. If we really wanted to see and really learn on a deeper level what took place to lead up to the tragedy of Karbala, we would have to look before. We have to look pre-Karbala. At the very least, we need to look at what happened in Kufa. The tragedy of Karbala doesn't begin physically in Karbala. It begins really in Kufa. And I don't just mean Kufa in a sense of Muslim ibn Aqeel. We're talking about Kufa from, before. You see, let's go all the way back. After the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, as we all know, we immediately see all the issues take place. The problems and those who are fighting for power, for wealth, for notoriety, and all their different motivations and objectives. So we saw all of that. Now, of course, we know Imam Ali alayhi salam was ready to take back his right, his haqq. The position of Khilafah was meant for him and for no one else, right? So what did he say according to many narrations? That he told some of his followers who were there on Ghadir, who were present, who knew that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the rightful successor. He tells them that, look, I'll take my right back, but I need supporters, I need followers, I need Shia. So, if you are ready to support me, and you're ready to overthrow and take back and undo this coup d'etat that took place at Saqifa, then shave your heads and show up at the masjid at Fajr time. And of course, we all know the history. They say that even if he had, according to some narrations, 40 people, some say less, some say even if he had 10 people, he would have taken his right back. But unfortunately, such is the dhulm, the madhlumiyah, the loneliness of the Imam, that even in that time, they say, the narrations differ, but they say maybe at most he had only 4 or 5, maybe 7 people actually come and show up ready to support him and fight and defend his honor and his right. Unfortunately, this happens to be the status of many of the Muslims. They're witness to the truth, they'll profess the truth, but when it comes time finally to act, when it comes time to pay up, they're silent. The coward, betraying nature in all of us comes out at a time when we need to express our true reality inside. And the reality we express, unfortunately, is not one that is pleasing to Allah, and it's not one that allows for the Ahlul-bayt to do what they were divinely commanded and appointed to do. Now, of course, fast forwarding to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we know he's receiving all of these different letters from Kufa, right? Between 16,000 to 30,000 letters. The people of Kufa are telling him, come, we'll support you, we'll defend you, we'll stand up, we'll do all of this. Now, Imam, on one sense, he has a duty to answer, but at the same time, he's not a fool. He knows history. He knows what Muslims have done in the past, especially the Ahlul Kufa. So he remembers what the people of Kufa did to his father, how they slandered him, how they abandoned him. He knows also how they treated his brother, how people from within Imam Hasan alayhi salam's own army were the ones that tried to assassinate him. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam is obviously well aware of the history, and it would have been foolish for him to just get up on his own and go. We think sometimes we're ready. Oh, Imam, we're just going to make the dua, now come. We're here, we're ready to fight for justice, we're ready to establish truth, we're ready to fight for your rights, and all these different things. Is that really the case? Do you and I really think we are any different than some of those people back then who called and wrote letters to the Imam and prayed and did all of that? And I'm sure they definitely had that love, but they couldn't express it outwardly when the Imam actually needed it. And when we call for the Imam, or anybody calls for the Imam, or calls for the truth to come to them, when they make such a claim, no ma'asum is so ignorant that they themselves would just get up and go and answer that. There's another system of education in place that the ma'asumin alayhimus salam seem to have been using, and they've taken this directly from the Holy Prophet Muhammad in his lifetime, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. When the Prophet had been invited to Medina, right? He was still in Mecca. So this is approximately 12 years after his mission begins. 12 years after Bi'tha. After this, when the tribes now, people are coming, and now, generally speaking, most of Medina, Yathrib, is ready to accept the Prophet. They're like, look, we're all Muslims now. We're ready for you. Come, teach us, tell us about Islam. So what is the claim that they're really making? They're saying, hey, we've recognized you as the teacher. We understand what you're going to offer us. We understand the purpose. We understand the intro. It's time for you to start teaching us the truth now. So they wanted to jump from phase 1 of the introduction to phase 2. Now actually teach us Islam. But of course, do you think the Prophet just got up and left on his own? No, of course not. The Prophet's way too intelligent for that. And the system that he seems to be teaching right in the beginning, if people only reflected and understood their history, which many of us unfortunately don't read, the Prophet doesn't just go himself when people are calling to him in Yathrib, in Medina. He sends one of his most trusted companions, Mus'ab ibn Umair, also known as Mus'ab al-Khair, or Mus'ab ibn al-Khair. A very, very righteous companion, right, who fought in the Battle of Badr very righteously, and unfortunately became shaheed and lost his life in the Battle of Uhud, when the Muslims had, again, betrayed the mission of Islam and the teachings of the Prophet. So, 3 years before the Prophet actually had gone to Medina, for 3 years, Mus'ab ibn Umair is sent to the people of Medina to teach them himself. You see, it's not just for us to ask, hey teacher, we're ready now, give us the material. Sometimes the teacher will say, look, you're not actually ready. There's some preliminaries you need to go through beforehand, even before I can come and teach you the material. So the Prophet sends his na'ib. He sends a representative on his behalf, someone who's well acquainted with his teachings. Somebody who understands the message of Islam directly from the Holy Prophet. Somebody who has a lived experience of being tortured in Mecca, have been disgraced and kicked out of his family, right? Because Mus'ab's family didn't accept the fact that he converted to Islam. So he was imprisoned, he was tortured, he was sent, and then he ended up fleeing to, Abyssinia, and then came back. And then, of course, was still a staunch fighter and supporter a fighter for Islam. For 3 years, Mus'ab was teaching the people of Medina. In fact, he even established Salatul Jum'ah there. What he did first was, of course, when he saw the situation, he asked for permission from the Prophet, and the Prophet gave him ijazah. He gave him permission to establish and lead Friday prayers so that he could have a proper relationship with his community and teach them properly. What's happening here? It's this. Us calling for the teacher, calling for that truth, doesn't mean we deserve it right away. Sometimes we need to go through a representative. Sometimes we need to go through a preliminary step even before we get the deeper, higher level teachings. And this is the exact same thing we see with Imam Hussein alayhi salam sending his confidant, somebody who understands the system of wilayah properly, his beloved Shia, Muslim ibn Aqeel, alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Hussein alayhi salam doesn't just go to Kufa on his own. He knows that, look, the people of Kufa think that they're ready to support me. Well, I know their history. Let me send my representative. Let me send my hujjah to Kufa, my proof on them. Let's see what he has to say. So he sends Muslim there. You see, following in the exact same footsteps as his grandfather. The Prophet sent somebody forward to educate, to assess the situation. We see Imam Ali alayhi salam using the same method. Imam Hasan alayhi salam used the same method. Of course, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, following, because they're all one light, uses the same exact method. He sends Muslim there, and of course we know what takes place there. Now our question is this, our point of reflection is this. When a teacher sends their representative, when a teacher is sending a substitute, but the class starts acting up and doesn't respect that substitute, do you really think that they are worthy enough to handle the teacher? And this happens normally, right? Even if somebody says they love their teacher, when a substitute comes in, somebody on behalf of the normal, real, everyday teacher comes in, you see a lot of students, they just act out, they don't care. And you see this happened to be the case with Muslim ibn Aqeel. The people claimed love for Imam Hussein. They claimed support. When the substitute, when the na'ib, when the representative shows up, they, unfortunately, abandon him. All of them, except for a handful. Who are we now to call the Imam of the time? Come back, lead us, educate us, give us all of this. The Imam of the time has told us and has been saying, as his grandfathers have been saying, as all of his forefathers have saying, they're all following the same sunnah, saying, I've already sent to you my representatives, and you don't even want to follow them. You're making a joke out of the system of wilaya. Do you really think you deserve me to come back and lead you? What a joke. I want us to really, think carefully about this. Do we really think the 12th Imam is going to act differently, any differently than his forefathers? No. We have specific narrations that say when the 12th Imam returns, he will follow, his return will follow the exact same, the standard operating procedure, the same sort of modus operandi of the Holy Prophet, right? He says, I'm going to follow the sunnah of my grandfather. And we see in Ghaiba, he did this in this minor and the major. He did the same thing. Appointing individuals, sending them to educate. Some Shias, they got the message, some didn't. The question for us is, are we getting the message? Are we actually really respecting and following the representatives of wilaya of our time? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, inshallah, when we get the chance, we can open up the discussion more about the system of wilaya, of niyaba, of the 12th Imam, but that's not our direct subject tonight, so we'll leave that aside. But the general points we're all familiar with, we need to reiterate it because sometimes we forget. We know that the 12th Imam basically has done two things. And this is the same that the Prophet has done and the same thing that the Imams have done. They give two different systems of wilaya, two different systems of niyaba, two different types of representation. One is specific and direct appointed representation, meaning, for example, the Prophet sending Mus'ab ibn Umair, somebody by name he sends. Imam Ali alayhi salam sending Malik al-Ashtar, somewhere specifically. Imam Hasan, for example, sending his own brother somewhere. Or Abdullah ibn Abbas, for example. Imam Hussein sends Muslim ibn Aqeel. During the Ghaibatul Sughra, the minor occultation, the minor ghaiba, we see that the Imam specifically appoints 4 individuals, right? So this is one type. We see all the Imams basically mentioning people by name, saying, you go to Basra, you do this. You go to Medina, you do this, right? We have that. In addition to that, we also, in addition to direct representation, direct appointment, we also have indirect, general all-inclusive representation. Now, what does that mean? That means when we have all these different narrations talking to us about who gets to speak on behalf of Islam when there's no direct people there. So, for example, from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam, we see narrations like al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The real scholars, right? Not the celebrities, not the fake academics. Real scholars, what that means, they are the ones who inherit the prophets. They're the inheritor of the prophets. They get the right to speak on behalf of Islam and behalf of prophetic knowledge. No one else. Then we see the same thing apply to whom? To the 12th Imam. The 12th Imam we see, right? In the famous narration regarding the problems that you Shias will find in the future, you need to refer to the narrators of our traditions so you can find the rulings. Why? Because they are my proofs, my hujjah on you, just like I am Allah's proof to them. The general system of wilayah. Islam is not something that you and I get to play around with. Just because we have access to Shia chat, social media groups, doesn't mean you and I have the right to start passing our own fatwas and coming to our own conclusions. And some of you I know are thinking, Hasan, you've been talking about this so much. Why do you keep beating this dead horse? Well, it's because this dead horse keeps on kicking, apparently. And no matter what the topic is, I don't want to mention examples, but there's obviously all these contemporary issues that are coming up in our community. People keep thinking that they have the right to speak and say, right? It's one thing to be humble about it, as we discussed and learned, but for somebody to come and say, Islam's position on X is this, the Imam did this. Come on. Are you really the representative of Islam now? Especially when we have a direct and indirect system given by Allah, given by the Imams. They've told us exactly what to do, but we have decided to abandon that idea. The Imams are saying, follow these scholars who have these specific criteria. Having taqwa, for example, right? Being humble, having these leadership qualities, whatever, all the qualities that have been mentioned in the narrations, which inshallah we will at one point devote a session to that. If they can do that, then why aren't we following them? Very simple one example is in terms of fiqh. We have this beautiful system of marja'iyah. In the same way, in the West, most of us are not going to go to court on our own and plead our own case because we don't know the system. We're going to hire a lawyer and they'll represent us. Why is it so difficult to this day for people to understand that we have legal representatives on our behalf? We have, alhamdulillah, a system, a marja taqlid, that can come and say, look, don't you worry about it. I'll do the research. I'll look at the Quran. I'll look at the narrations, as being an inheritor of the knowledge of the prophets and the Imams. I'll figure out the rules for you. If you trust me, then I'll print this stuff out in a book and you follow it. But no, that's not enough for some people. That's so far-fetched and so crazy, even though we do this in every other sphere of life. But when it comes to this, they say, no, I have the right to determine whether, I should follow this type of moon sighting rule, or no, I think chess ruling should be like this, or whatever it happens to be. We just go ahead and start making up everything we want. Right? Again, a sign of that ignorance that the sixth Imam talked about, if you remember. We're so satisfied in our own knowledge that we've abandoned the knowledge of the Ahlul-bayt. Na'udhu billah. And this is just in the sphere of legal rulings. What about akhlaq? What about history? What about spirituality? What about philosophy? What about, again, the point that we've mentioned sometimes about science itself, right? The empirical sciences. What about the sacred, divine sciences that the Ahlul-bayt had mentioned? Why is it so difficult for us to, if we have this love for the Ahlul-bayt, why are we abandoning their real teachings? And if and until we are unable to truly follow the representatives of our Imam, do we really expect the 12th Imam to come and answer our call? We're writing the letter to the 12th Imam. The Imam has answered by sending us representatives, generally speaking, and we've even abandoned them. So before we go and start commanding and demanding and saying, Imam, Imam, look at what's going on, come back, ajil, ajil, al-ajal, al-ajal, all of this. We should really introspect and think, are we giving the real ulama, the urafa, the true scholars of knowledge, have we really put them in the place that they deserve? Or do we just kind of toss them aside and consider ourselves equals to them? This is a point that we all need to reflect on a night like this. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Just like we know, Muslim ibn Aqeel is sent by the Imam. He's sent to investigate. He's sent to figure out, what exactly is the situation of the people. Unfortunately, as you know, my brothers and sisters, you know the history. You know how he was abandoned. You know he was left aside. He was betrayed. And a betrayal to Muslim is a betrayal and was a betrayal to Imam Hussein. And a betrayal to Imam Hussein is a betrayal to Bibi Fatima and Imam Ali. And a betrayal to Bibi Fatima and Imam Ali is a betrayal to Rasulullah. And a betrayal to Rasulullah is a betrayal to Allah and His deen. But of course, these Muslims living in Kufa who abandoned Muslim ibn Aqeel, they were not able to connect their words to their actions, their beliefs to their actions. What they had in their heart, they couldn't express it and defend our poor Muslim ibn Aqeel. How difficult it must have been for Muslim. Can you imagine the position that he was in? Have you ever been invited somewhere? Right? I'm sure all of us, inshallah, hopefully things open up soon where we can come back into a situation where we can meet one another in person. But I'm sure all of you remember having been invited somewhere. And once somebody, after ringing that door, knocking on the door, and they open and they say, please come in, please, please. That feeling is such a nice feeling, to be welcomed somewhere. Now imagine the other side. Imagine somebody has invited you to their home. They've enticed you with a lavish meal. They say, please come, we want to take care of you. You come to their doorstep and they say, get lost. I don't want to see you anymore. They abandoned you. This is the pain, this is the bala, this is the struggle of Muslim ibn Aqeel. Now you know the history, so I don't want to recite all of it. I just want you to try to put your heart in the same place as Muslim. Somebody who's trying to come, who's already now sent his letter to his Mawla. And now he's thinking, what's a bigger tragedy? The fact that these individuals have betrayed me, or that now they're going to come and betray my Mawla. They're going to betray my master. We know Muslim, as he's abandoned in the masjid, he's walking towards the palace to go and stand against Ibn Ziyad, la'anatullah alayh. A kind lady finds him alone on her doorstep, tawa'a. She took him in, offered him food and water. And she now grieves for the fact that I can't believe people of Kufa have treated the Na'ib of Abu Abdullah Hussein like this. Unfortunately, the son of Tawa'a is a greedy, disgusting individual who comes and brings Muslim ibn Aqeel to the palace of Ibn Ziyad in chains. Once there, as we all know the history, Muslim now, he begins to make requests. And how amazing that it is. I'm sure one of the desires of Muslim was that he, of course, had wanted to be with his master Hussein. He wanted to fight alongside him and defend him, but he didn't get that honor. But perhaps the way that he ended up becoming a shaheed, perhaps this was Allah's gift to him. To say that the same way that my Abd Hussein is going to become shaheed, I want you Muslim to become shaheed as well. Think about, for example, Muslim now coming and asking for a glass of water. Ibn Ziyad comes and somebody brings him a glass of water, but because his lips had some blood on it, a drop of blood comes and falls into that glass of water. And now he's unable to drink it. Look at this gift that Allah is giving Muslim ibn Aqeel. In the same way that Imam Hussein will be killed thirsty, Muslim now will be killed thirsty as well. He's become one with the Imam. In the same way now, Muslim says, please give me a proper ghusl, give me a proper kafan, give me a proper burial. Ibn Ziyad denies his request, mutilates his body. In the same way that the body of our beloved Imam Hussein was mutilated as well. Look at how Allah has given a gift to Muslim, letting him become shaheed and feel the exact same pain that Imam Hussein alayhi salam would feel. But there's one pain that differs between both of them. After news comes to the camp of Imam Hussein, after news comes there that Muslim has been killed in Kufa, Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes and he's able to caress the head of the daughter of Muslim. And she, of course, with her ma'rifah knows, my uncle, you're caressing my head like this. Is it because I'm an orphan now? Is that why you're doing this? And this is a gift that the daughter of Muslim gets. But when it comes time, when Imam Hussein becomes shaheed, who will put their hands on his daughter? Imam Hussein would caress the daughter of Muslim, but Shimr is the one who put his dirty, disgusting hands on the daughter of Hussein. He will slap her around. The soldiers of Umar ibn Sa'd will pull off the earrings and have blood drip from the ears of Sakina. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم روتے تھے شہ عالم یہ سارے محاسن تم روتے تھے شہ عالم یہ سارے محاسن تم کہتے تھے حرم سے ہم اے نوحہ گرے مسلم رستے میں سنی شہنے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم واہ حسرت واہ دردہ قسمت میں یہ لکھا تھا واہ حسرت واہ دردہ قسمت میں یہ لکھا تھا یہ داغ دکھائے گا مجھ کو سفر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم ہے دل کو بڑا رونا مظلوم کی بیوہ کا ہے دل کو بڑا رونا مظلوم کی بیوہ کا کس طرح سناؤں گا اس کو خبر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم کوفے میں جو جائیں گے سن سن جو یہ پائیں گے کوفے میں جو جائیں گے سن سن جو یہ پائیں گے کیا حال بتائیں گے نور نظر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم ثابت تھے محبت میں فرق آیا نہ ہمت میں ثابت تھے محبت میں فرق آیا نہ ہمت میں سر دے دیا الفت میں تھا یہ جگر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم یعنی کہ کٹا تن سے کوفے میں سر مسلم سب خلق دگا پر تھی آمادہ جفا پر تھی سب خلق دگا پر تھی آمادہ جفا پر تھی ہر وقت خدا پر تھی لیکن نظر مسلم رستے میں سنی شینے جس دم خبر مسلم यानी के कटा तन से कूफे में सरे मुस्लिम रहमल्लाहु मन करा सूरतुल मुबारकतुल फातिहा मअस सलावात अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله الآخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا.